We start with team coverage in our fire watch this morning. KEZI 9 News investigates the risk of a worst-case scenario happening here in Eugene. Reporter Jessica Babb finds out who's most at risk of suffering disaster from a wildfire. Meteorologist Andrew Shiptovsky updates us on our drought forecast. But first, we start with Jessica. Fire officials telling her that it's not a matter of if, but when one of these destructive fires happen here. What did you find out?
Well, that's exactly right. Fire officials I've spoken with in this community say that right now 95% of Oregon is extremely dry, meaning these fires, like the one in Redding, are not only a risk, but a threat. The deadly Carr Fire raging in Northern California, spreading more than 160,000 acres. 7 people now dead, and more than 1,500 structures burned to the ground. Communities now devastated.
Some people don't imagine it, but it can happen anywhere.
Oftentimes, so much devastation happening because more homes are built in heavily wooded areas.
My concern is that people aren't prepared for this.
It could even happen right here. Some of the areas at the highest risk are the wildland-urban interface areas. It's where people and homes meet wildlife. Look at this map. The areas in red around the edges of Eugene and Springfield have high fire hazards.
People wonder about seeing wildlife in their backyard. It's beautiful when you have it. It also means you have the potential for a wildfire to be right up against the back of your property. California is no stranger to that. We're beginning to see that in Oregon as we branch out and build newer homes and more homes in our state.
Fire officials say fighting fires in these areas can be difficult. Often, the roads are narrow, which can make it harder for fire rigs to get through. There's a high fuel load, which means there's lots of flammable material in the area. Also, many of the homes are built on hills, and because they're at an angle, it could be more difficult for crews to fight the flames.
Someone who's taken a little bit of extra time, it's easy for us to save that home.
There are ways you can protect your home. Fire experts say you should create a defensible space around your home, making sure things that burn aren't right next to it.
Having a defensible space around the home keeps it safer for the homeowner and makes it easier for us to do our job and keeps it safer for us as well.
You should also make sure you limb up trees above your roof and make sure your property is accessible. Harrison says it's also important to plan ahead. Make sure you thought about how you would evacuate and what you would do if something were to happen.
It absolutely could happen here, and this is why we want people to take the measures that they can themselves ahead of time. Help us protect them.
Harrison says they are prepared to fight these kinds of fires, but says in an emergency, the resources would be stretched thin, so it's still important that you can do your part. Live in the studio, Jessica Babb, KEZI 9 News.
Thank you.